To the war here in Europe now, and Germany has authorized Ukraine to use weapons supplied by Berlin to strike limited military targets inside Russia. It marks a policy shift and follows a similar U.S. decision to allow Ukraine to use American weapons on targets on Russian soil. The looser restrictions only apply to the eastern Kharkiv region, where Ukraine is struggling to hold off Russia's latest advances.
This is what remains of the town of Vovchansk in Ukraine's Kharkiv region. Ukrainian troops have been fighting here for weeks, trying to hold back relentless Russian attacks. Many now believe they have a better chance to do so. Germany has become the latest NATO country to allow Kyiv to use weapons supplied by Berlin for limited strikes inside Russia.
In recent weeks, Russia has prepared, coordinated and carried out attacks from positions in the Kharkiv area, in particular from the directly adjacent Russian border region. Together, we're convinced that Ukraine has a right under international law to defend itself against these attacks.
Germany's decision follows a similar one from the US. American-supplied weapons can now be used to counter Russian attacks near the Kharkiv region.
Over the past few weeks, Ukraine came to us and asked for the authorization to use weapons that we're providing to defend against this aggression, including against Russian forces that are massing on the Russian side of the border and then attacking into Ukraine. That went right to the president, and as you heard, he's approved the use of our weapons for that purpose. Going forward, we'll continue to do what we've been doing, which is, as necessary, adapt and adjust.
Kyiv has welcomed the news, but it's unclear how it will impact the situation on the ground.
So from my understanding, Ukraine still has a limit placed upon the ability to use those weapons. So those weapons are supposed to be used only in Kharkiv region in order to strike Russian positions across the border. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the Ukrainian forces can use ATACMS to strike any military targets any further than that. So it is very limited in scope, it seems. And we don't know what kind of effect it will have, especially as these things are being announced publicly. So Russia has enough time to prepare for that.
Russia has denounced the decision, accusing NATO of deliberately provoking a new level of escalation.
Let's get some analysis from Fabrice Pothier, international security expert and CEO at the Rasmussen Global think tank in Brussels. He's also the former NATO director of policy planning. Fabrice, why this crucial policy shift from NATO now?
Well, first, it's not from NATO, it's from NATO countries, and this is quite different. This is not NATO, the organization, it's NATO, the members, some members who are allowing or releasing some of the caveats and restrictions they had put on weapons. Why? Simply because we're responding yet again with too much delay to a Russian escalation. And here in particular, it is the Russian pressure, systematic destructive pressure on the second largest city in Ukraine, Kharkiv. And I think this was long overdue. And this is an example of us basically expecting Ukrainians to fight for and to defend their land with one hand tied in their back. So hopefully it will allow them to have a bit more room for maneuver, to be able to exert pressure back on the Russian forces, which are basically operating from the Russian territory. But this is obviously a far cry from a turning point or a game changer for the Ukrainians.
As you've just alluded, Ukraine is outpowered at the moment. Can this make a real difference on the ground?
It might be allowing them to, release some of the pressure that the Russians have been building up on Kharkiv and the region. But I think it's important to note that this is part of, I think, the way we mismanage this war, which is a series of late decisions that respond to some Russian escalation, but with 6-12-month delay. And the problem is the Russians are very adaptive, as we saw, and very resourceful. And every time we respond and try to take control back on the escalation, they will find new ways to escalate. And I think this is where, instead of managing this war by small drips, and small decisions, we should give Ukraine everything it needs to defend its territory under international law, and we should give Ukraine the guarantees that its future is with us. And this is NATO membership. And if we do that, I think the Russians are going to have ambiguities and our delays.
That is Fabrice Pothier. Thank you very much. Thank you, Fabrice.
Thank you very much.